Let's talk now, though, to Michael Martins, former US Embassy London political specialist, to see what he has got to say about the Joe Biden situation. Michael, very good morning to you.
Nice to see you, Mike. How you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed. I mean, the Democrats are getting themselves in a right old state over this, aren't they? You know, for ages and ages and ages, they've been telling us there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. You know, he hasn't got dementia. He's absolutely perfectly fine. He works very hard. He's not as young as he used to be and all of that. Why don't you look at Donald Trump? He forgets what he's saying half the time as well. But it now seems to be reaching a kind of critical mass, with the New York Times calling for him to step down, CNN saying he should go, and finally now the White House having to basically defend his performance in a debate, which was woeful.
Yeah. No, it's getting to that stage where it's like, is this a credible option for the next president? And
right.
I think they're coming out saying he's not stepping down. President Biden met with a bunch of Democratic governors, I think it was yesterday, to sort of, I guess, settle the horses. But essentially the main issue is the process to pick a next Democratic candidate is just, it's messy. Right. It'll have to be, because the Ohio brought forward their next, they have to choose their delegates for the next president to August 7th. So it's a bit over a month away. And then to do that, you know, you have to find another alternative. That alternative has to find a vice president. Right. It's just messy.
Right.
So I think they've left it a bit too late.
And they've got the Kamala Harris problem as well, haven't they? Because a lot of people are saying, well, hang on, she was brought in because she was representative of some things that they thought they should have in the White House. Mm-hmm. You can't really then, you know, just get rid of her and go, sorry, you can't have the big job.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the problem that Kamala faces is, you know, she's not as well liked as a lot of other alternatives, but it's exactly as you say, you can't really get rid of her as vice president. You need to, I don't know, the Dems don't really have a lot of good options at the moment, to be honest with you.
And to be fair, I was watching a couple of clips of hers last night because there's lots of stuff about her kind of doing the rounds on social media. And I actually realised I didn't really know how she spoke because I haven't really seen much of her.
Yeah, I think part of it, I think, is a bit logistics. She has the most tie-breaking votes of any vice president. So, like, literally, she wasn't able to get out. She was just in D.C. for a lot of this term. Right. But I think the other big issue is she's not as charismatic of a speaker as others. Like, there are other Democrats that are a bit more charismatic than her. And I think they tried to make it a big contest, obviously, between Biden and President Trump. And now after that debate, I imagine they're trying to change that strategy, but I don't know who they're going to settle on or how.
Well, exactly right. Let's have a look at what Donald Trump thinks of it all, because he was caught up by somebody on a golf course the other day, and he gives his assessment of Biden right here.
He gave me so much. How did I do with the debate the other night?
Oh, amazing.
He kicked that old broken down pile of It's a bad guy. He just quit, you know. He's quitting the race.
Is that right?
Yep, I got him out of the race. And that means we have Kamala. I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. She's so pathetic.
It's so amazing.
It's just so bad. So
I just can't imagine.
But can you imagine that guy dealing with Putin and the president of China, who's a fierce person? He's a fierce man, a very tough guy. And they see him. They can't. But they just announced he's probably quitting.
Good.
Very good.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Just keep knocking him out, right?
That's it.
I mean, that man is a man who looks pretty relaxed about life in general, isn't he?
Yeah, well, President Trump loves famously to golf, and I think he's playing it well, because if he's calling it out as President Biden's going to quit, you know, it forces everybody to ask that question of President Biden's team, and it forces President Biden back on the defensive. Right. Like President Trump, I think he won both the debate and he's winning the aftermath of it. I was actually surprised that during the debate, President Trump, you know, was not as aggressive as he normally is. He picked his moments and did well with them. And I think that hasn't really been talked about as much, but just because of how poorly President Biden performed during the election.
Yeah, I mean,
not the election, during the debate.
I was quite surprised in a way that they let Joe Biden do the debate without realising that he was going to put in that kind of performance, because, I mean, he had plenty of time to to plan it. He had plenty of time to practice it and to read up on stuff that he should know about. But he's now claiming, oh, I was suffering from jet lag and I nearly fell asleep. Well, sorry, that's not much of an excuse for a guy who was down in Camp David for 5 days, preparing for it. And also, as lots of people have said, he flies around on Air Force One. It's not like being stuck on, an economy flight with two people next to you who won't let you go to sleep.
Yeah, no, I was reading some of those, I guess, like justifications afterwards, and I do think it was just a poor performance. I don't think the ideas of jet lag really land with me personally. I think, he's older. He's 81 years old, and I think it's starting to show. There's no other way of describing it, right? Like, and I think, especially on a presidential campaign, it's a lot. Like there are a lot of states. You got to go to a lot of states, a lot of rallies. You're doing a lot. So I feel like a transatlantic flight before a debate.
I mean, listen, we've all had jobs and we've all done things where, there's been a bit of a struggle to stay awake. I used to fly back from New York to London on a regular basis and go and do a radio show after having had about 3 hours sleep. It can be done, and maybe not so much when you're 81, but maybe that tells you why 81-year-olds shouldn't be president.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of kind of two minds of it, obviously, but I think his follow-on performances, although heavily like scripted and curated, he seemed a bit more lively.
Yeah.
I think it was a poor debate. Because I think there's one more planned, and I don't see how that's going to happen.
No.
So I really think the next couple of weeks we're going to find out whether or not he stays on as the Democrats' candidate. And time is ticking, and there are a lot of questions that aren't answered. And we're going to see, because I don't think this issue is going away.
No, it's really not. And it seems to me as though with the story that appeared in the New York Times yesterday, attributing sort of, quotes to, people close to Joe Biden saying he's considering the possibility of not running. I mean, that's the beginning for me of a very slow kind of process of moving towards a point which you might not want to get to, but you will eventually have to get to, because he has to get to it really before the national convention, doesn't he? Which I think is coming up at the end of July, is it, or beginning of August?
I think it's mid-August.
Right.
Essentially, they have to draw a line under it, and I don't think they're doing enough of that yet. They're trying to pivot it back to, oh, look at all we've achieved. And yeah, President Biden has definitely achieved some things. I think ultimately they're not addressing the issue, and I don't think I think they're addressing the issue, but I don't think they're doing it in a way that a lot of voters are going to be sort of looking at and believing. Frankly, right. I think there are a lot of unanswered questions after it of, is President Biden fit to be the next president? And he seems to think so. Now a lot of his team are seeming to think so, and a lot of the bigger Democratic grandees haven't really weighed in to a large extent. I think they're waiting to see how the dust is going to settle. But if folks like Pelosi and Schumer start saying maybe it's time to go, then I think it's going to be a completely different ball game.
Yeah, it's going to be more and more difficult, I think, as time goes on, because also time being what it is, he's bound to make another gaffe or two, or fall over, or trip up, or do something which will be another sort of nail in the coffin, if you pardon the expression, surely before long. But listen, good to talk to you, Michael. Thank you very much indeed. Michael Martins, former US Embassy London political specialist.